Okay. Good morning. Nice to see you again. How have you been? Good. Last Sunday, I saw you with summery weather, and now full-blown fall weather. So the weather patterns are changing. But I'm not going to change. I'm going to continue on what I was saying from last Sunday. So I have a handout for people who are working. You can please grab one. Mary, I think, made enough copies for everybody. So what I'm going to do today follows from the ground I set up last Sunday. So I want to do a very short summary of what happened last Sunday. Last Sunday, I argued that several books in the Bible make it a priority to establish a just and equitable society. In the socio-historical context of the Bible, poverty, oppression, and marginalization are religious crimes. For the book of Deuteronomy, the welfare of the community as a whole was a priority against the economic prosperity of individuals. Justice has to be fair and equitable, the book of Deuteronomy argues, and what is at stake is the cohesion of the social fabric. Amos, the prophet, understands justice in the sense of respecting human beings and in the sense of behaving in a way that promotes equity and harmony in a community. He defines righteousness in the sense of being honest and forthright instead of crooked. For Amos, justice and righteousness equal respect and honesty. Amos, Martin Luther King Jr., and Gandhi agree that we cannot divide social, economic, political, and religious work in separate compartments. It means that we should distribute power with respect for one another and honesty. It means that our politics must not promote discrimination and deceit. Jesus, when changing the lex talionis from the book of Exodus in the Gospel of Matthew, he aimed to get us to understand the circumstances that led a person to strike us on the cheek and to sue us for our coat. Jesus wants us to feel in our skin the way that person felt. Only then, when we join in community with the oppressed, we will be ready to consider what we might do next to welcome the outcast back in our community. That is all last Sunday. Today, I will argue that the book of Ruth in the Old Testament is an example of two things. First, identifying with the marginalized, that thing that Jesus wanted us to do. And two, welcoming the outcast back in our community. Before we read the book of Ruth, however, we need to set up context, because Ruth is not at the beginning of the Old Testament, it's further in. So we need to know what is established, not about Ruth, but about her people. Ruth is introduced to us in the book of Ruth as a Moabite. So what do we know about Moabites? Why is it important to know that Ruth is a Moabite? I'm going to begin with Genesis chapter 19, and I want to read verses 30 to 36. I will read this first section from Genesis, and then I will ask you to start reading the book of Ruth when we get there. Do you all have a Bible? There are some in the pews, so we're going to go around and read a few verses, and then we're going to discuss them. But I will read for you Genesis chapter 19, 30 to 36. So what happened in Genesis chapter 19? In the beginning, we have the story, which is a fairly well-known story that most people know from Genesis. It's the destruction of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. The three people that have escaped that destruction is Lot, Abraham's uncle, and his two daughters. If you remember the story, his wife turned around to see at the city as it was being destroyed and turned into salt, right? So we pick up the story now when Lot and his two daughters have survived. Chapter 19, verse 30. Now Lot went up out of Zoar and settled in the hills with his 2 daughters, for he was afraid to stay in Zoar. So he lived in a cave with his 2 daughters. And the firstborn said to the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man on earth to come into us after the manner of all the world. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, so that we may preserve offspring through our father. Family building in the Old Testament is the absolute priority for any woman. These women think that there is no one else surviving the world. They are the only left survivors living in a cave. Everybody else has died. And they come up with this plan. Verse 33. So they make their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father. He did not know whence he lay down or whence he rose. On the next day, the firstborn said to the younger, Look, I lay last night with my father. Let us make him drink wine tonight also. Then you go in, lie with him, so that we may preserve offspring through our father. So they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger rose and lay with him, and he did not know whence he lay down or whence he rose. Thus both the daughters of Lot became pregnant by their father. The firstborn bore a son, and he named him Moab. He is the ancestor of the Moabites, and this is what I want you to pay attention to, the next 3 words, to this day. As far as ancient Israel is concerned, the Moabites are incestuous people. Not the biggest or the most prestigious pedigree a person can have. The younger also bore a son and named him Ben-Ami. He is the ancestor of the Ammonites to this day. So when we say Ruth the Moabite, you know that her last name, the Moabite, comes with a very shameful background. It's not something to be proud of. Yes? We have that? Okay. The other text I want to read with you is Deuteronomy chapter 23, verses 3 to 6, where they have some very particular rules about Moabites and how to treat them. So, chapter 23 in Deuteronomy, verses 3 to 6. No Ammonite or Moabite shall be admitted to the assembly of the Lord. They are not allowed anywhere in the people of Israel. Even to the 10th generation, none of their descendants shall be admitted to the assembly of the Lord. Not just the Moabites and Ammonites who are alive now. To the 10th generation, they are to be outcasts. Yes? They are going to explain to you why now. Because they did not meet you with food and water on your journey out of Egypt, and because they hired against you Balaam, son of Beor, from Pethor of Mesopotamia to curse you. That all happened in the book of Numbers. Yet the Lord your God refused to heed Balaam. The Lord your God turned the curse into a blessing for you, because the Lord your God loved you. You shall never promote their welfare or their prosperity as long as you live. Not only the Moabites have a shameful origin, the book of Deuteronomy says never to be admitted in Israel, and you are not going to care about them because they did not care about you. Do we understand how heavy a burden comes with the name the Moabite? Yeah. The books so far have made it clear these are people who are to be excluded. They are the absolute outcasts of the Hebrew Bible. The book of Ruth, however, is going to change everything. The book of Ruth, by way of introduction, before we start reading, is exceptional insofar as it relates human action with little appeal to divine intervention. In fact, God does not appear in the book at all. God is present when people invoke God in their prayers or in their well-wishing, but God does not appear at all. All action is human action. And as I said last time, when we read a book in the Old Testament, we need to know what the language says. Like for Amos, it was mishpat and tzedakah, justice and righteousness. There are two very important Hebrew words in the book of Ruth that we need to discuss. The difficulty with the words, again, they do not translate exactly in English. We don't have the exact equivalent of these words. The first word is hesed. What most people translate it as is loving kindness. And most times when we find it in the Bible, God demonstrates this quality by saving, redeeming, and comforting people, even when they've done nothing to deserve it. So hesed is something that usually God displays. Yes? Okay. This book has multiple acts of hesed, multiple acts of loving kindness that work kind like an avalanche. Like an avalanche would start at the top of the mountain and go down. By the time they've reached the bottom of the mountain, they've taken over everything. So much so that they have transformed the entire community. The book of Ruth has actions that for the time being are very subversive. They go against the norm. But these subversive actions transform the Israelite community. Let's go there and start reading the story. So if you open up the book of Ruth, I will say one more thing by way of introduction. Most people are going to argue, Hebrew Bible scholars that is, that the book of Ruth is the most carefully written book in the entire Hebrew Bible, and I believe them. I have a different favorite book, but I'm not going to say that now. But I believe their arguments, they're very well-made arguments. And it could read from a number of ways, the book of Ruth. Someone could see it as this is why Israelite customs are valuable, or this is the origin of King David and the monarchy, or this is why we encourage proselytes in Israel, or this is why the well-being of the people as a whole is more important than the well-being of the nation, or to show how values of friendship and loyalty are more important than family, or to even preserve women traditions. These are all valuable arguments about the book of Ruth, and I want to honor them. But today we're going to read it from the point of view of the outcast being welcomed by acts of loving kindness. So, Ruth chapter 1, verse 1. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem in Judah went to live in the country of Moab, he and his wife and the 2 sons. The time of Judges not only evokes an era of lawlessness, adventure, danger even, I would say scandal. Have you read the book of Judges? Then you know the scandals I'm talking about. But what it does is it sets up a narrative ambush for the audience who wants to discuss the past. And you'll see what that ambush is in a minute. The other thing I want you to pay attention is the word famine. Famine is a very powerful narrative device in the Hebrew Bible. It is used to explain large migrations of people. The land of Israel is a land that depends on rainfall agriculture. If you don't have rain, you don't have food. A dry year is all that it takes to drive people to poverty and famine. Famine pushes people across borders, even enemy borders. These are stories of exposure and transformation. So for people who know what famine is in the Hebrew Bible, you get what is going to follow by dropping the word famine right there in the beginning. Verse 2. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the names of his two sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They went into the country of Moab and remained there. But Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with her two sons. These took Moabite wives. The name of one was Orpah, and the name of the other was Ruth. When they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, so the woman was left without her two sons and her husband. What we're missing when we read the Hebrew is what the names mean. And if I read you the English with the meaning of the Hebrew, you're going to have a different view of the story. So now I'm going to read the same verses, but I'm going to translate the names for you. Yes? Okay. The name of the man was My God is King, and the name of his wife was the Pleasant One. And the names of his two sons were Spent and the Sick One, the one ailing. They were Ephrathites from the house of bread in Judah. They went into the country of Moab and remained there. But My God is King, the husband of the Pleasant One, died. And she was left with her two sons, the Spent and the Sickness One. These two Moabite wives, the name of one was the Back of Neck, and the name of the other was Companion. When they had lived there about 10 years, both Spent and Sickness also died, so that the woman was left with her two sons and her husband. You see how the names kind of point you where the story is going to go? What was the name of the husband? My God is King. Spent and Sickness. The story begins, and he's a done deal. He's going to die soon. You don't expect to see great things from either of the sons. And the two women are Back of Neck and the other Companion. And Naomi, of course, is a Pleasant One. So, verse 6. When she started to return with her daughters-in-law from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had considered his people and given them food, so she set out from the place where she had been living, she and her two daughters-in-law, and they went on their way to go back to the land in Judah. As childless women, 3 of them, Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah, are women who are worthless in the ancient Near East. There are only 2 ways a woman would have worth in ancient Near East. Either as an unmarried virgin in the house of her father, so her father could marry the daughter off and get a price for giving away the virgin, or as a childbearing wife in the house of her husband, so her husband would get the benefits of having children. These are 3 women who have no children. By definition, they're outcasts, all 3 of them. Verse 8, But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, Go back, each of you, to your mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly, that's the hesed that I told you about, right? The love and kindness, with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. Naomi acts as the head of the household. Her husband is dead. She is taking charge. The Lord grant that you may find security, each of you, in the house of your husband. Then she kissed them, and they wept aloud. They said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Do I still have sons in my womb that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. Even if I thought there was hope for me, even if I should have a husband tonight and bear sons, would you then wait until they were grown? Would you then refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, it has been far more bitter for me than for you, because the hand of the Lord has turned against me." Then they wept aloud again. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. What Naomi is referring to is the law of the leveret. When a woman is married and her husband dies and she has no children from that husband, then she needs to wait up until another person from that family is of age, and then she marries that person. And when she has a child from that new husband, that child belongs to the dead one. That child takes the name of the first one of the family. And Naomi says, "I cannot bear more sons, even if I'm too old. This law of the leveret, that is a custom for my people, won't happen for you. You have nothing here." Orpah, the back of the neck, kissed her mother and turned her back of her neck, which means she's going away, right? But Ruth decides to cling to Naomi. I want you to pay attention, because that act of loving kindness that Naomi talked about in her prayer to God is the one that is going to start that chain reaction of acts of loving kindness. It starts with Naomi. It tumbles down with Ruth and her loyalty towards Naomi. Then it goes to Boaz, who is going to deal kindly with Ruth. And by the end, the entire community in the land of Bethlehem is going to deal kindly with Naomi, Ruth, Boaz, and their unconventional family. This chain reaction of acts of loving kindness challenges us today in ways that our laws, practices, do they deal in similar ways, acts of loving kindness to those who are vulnerable or to the strangers? I'm pausing for dramatic effect, but also because I want you to think. Here, in an ancient community, it takes one person's loving kindness to start off the chain reaction. Let's go to verse 14. So she said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." Naomi encourages companion, the pleasant one, encourages companion to go. Do what the back of neck did. Turn around, turn your back to me. But Ruth said, "Do not press me to leave you or to turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God." Anyone who hears this, like, have you asked her people? Because you're a Moabite, and her people might have different opinions about this. But Naomi started that act of loving kindness, and her husband's name was, "My God is King." So God is going to be overseeing the whole thing. Verse 17, Where you die, I will die. There will I be buried. May the Lord do thus and so to me, and more as well, if even death parts me from you. This is a unique vow in the Old Testament. Ruth is now joined to Naomi till death and even beyond. It is curious because, one, it is a woman who confides unconditionally in another woman, not a man. And then, this is a relationship between a mother and a daughter-in-law. These relationships are supposed to be filled with tension and unease, rivalry even. Ruth's relationship to Naomi crosses boundaries of age, nationality, and religion. Verse 18, I didn't read that. When Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more to her. So the two of them went until they came to Bethlehem. When they came to the house of bread, the whole town was stirred because of them, and the woman said, "Is this Naomi?" Notice that the text says, the two of them returned. Do you see it? That is exceptional because usually the Hebrew Bible focuses on the protagonist, not the companion. And here, when the people see them, they see both of them. This is going to become more peculiar, because what is that the people ask? What's the question they asked? Is this Naomi? What is it they're not asking? Who is that? Is he a Moabite? Do you remember what we know about Moabites so far? Yes. See how Naomi responds. She said to them, "Call me no longer Naomi. Don't call me the pleasant one. Call me the bitter one. For the Almighty has dealt bitterly with me. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi, the pleasant one, when the Lord has dealt harshly with me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?" Is he introducing Ruth? Does he say anything about who that person with her is? No. Naomi focuses on herself, her experiences, and she doesn't say anything about that person next to her, to the people in the community. Nothing, not a word. By the way, she is also offering a job to God as he speaks about him. He calls him God the Almighty. In Hebrew, that word is Shaddai. And I think she's using it in irony, because obviously this Almighty God has not been that almighty for Naomi, right? The other person who uses this epithet for God in the Old Testament is Job. Do we all know what happened to Job? Lost all his family and all his fortune and everything. Also, you should know that in the book of Genesis, that epithet Almighty is associated with blessings and fecundity, nothing of which applies here for Naomi. So Naomi returned together with Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, who came back with her from the country of Moab. They came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. Ruth the Moabite from the country of Moab. This is what everybody in House of Bread is thinking. Can we afford to take in someone that God treats with disdain? Can we afford to provide shelter for someone that God said, to the 10th generation, are not going to be in the people of Israel? Could this person be bringing calamity with her? Look what happened to Naomi when she went to the land of Moab. Everybody died and she came back along. Is she a bad omen? Does she bring disaster from Moab to the house of bread? What demands will two women place upon a community and about their economic survival? Who is going to provide food for them? How are we to understand that foreigner who worships other gods? Do you understand how difficult that is? What was the name of the dead husband? My God is king. God does not appear as an actor, but providence plays a big role in the book of Ruth. Providentially, the two women are back in time for what harvest? Barley. God does not appear in the story, but he is lurking in the shadows. Chapter 2, verse 1. Now Naomi had a kinsman on her husband's side, a prominent rich man of the family of Elimelech, whose name was, "In him there is strength." Ruth and Naomi have two assets. The first is the right of the poor to glean what Israelite harvesters have left behind. Their second asset is that Ruth happens to go glean in a mighty relative of Naomi with an even mightier name. In him there is strength. Verses 2 and 3. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain behind someone in whose sight I may find favor." She said to her, "Go, my daughter." So she went. She came and gleaned in the field behind the reapers. As it happened, she came to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the family of Elimelech. Ruth is the one to go out and get food for both of them. It could be said that Naomi is too old for manual labor. That's why she's not going. One could also say that she suffered one too many losses in her life, her husband, her two sons, the other daughter-in-law, so she wants to stay in seclusion from society. The rabbis, when they read this part of the text, she says Naomi didn't want to appear in public because she didn't want to feel ashamed for everything that has happened to her. If we go with that line of interpretation, Ruth is not just providing food for Naomi by gleaning barley, she's also providing emotional and psychological support. Verse 4. Just then Boaz came from Bethlehem. He said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." They answered, "The Lord bless you." You see how everybody mentions God? Yes, they're God-believing people. Then Boaz said to his servants, who was in charge of the reapers, "To whom does this young woman belong?" In true patriarchal nature, Boaz asked like a man of his time, who is in charge of this young woman? Who is the man who's responsible for her? Does he have a man responsible for her? No. They're all dead. Verse 6. The servants who was in charge of the reapers answered, "She is the Moabite." How does everybody know her? The outcast. The people we should not be dealing with. That's the first thing they say. She is the Moabite who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. So I want you to pay attention that she's not saying the Moabite who grew up in Moab. She's a thoroughly Moabite. She said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind your reapers." So she came, and she has been on her feet from her early this morning until now, without resting even for a moment. See that Ruth is identified through Naomi, not her dead husband, sickness. The other thing I want you to pay attention to is the words that Boaz is going to say. I'm going to read how Boaz responds, and I will ask you, what can you tell me about him? Yes? Okay, so I will read the words, and you think what impression you get by reading what he says. Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Now listen, my daughter, do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Keep your eyes on the field that is being reaped and follow behind them. I have ordered the young men not to bother you. If you get thirsty, go to the vessels and drink from what the young men have drawn." Then she fell prostrate with her face to the ground and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your sight, that you should take notice of me when I am a foreigner?" She totally undersells it. She's not just a foreigner, she's a Moabite. Yes? But Boaz answered her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before, who, by the way, are totally prejudiced against you." I'm returning to the Bible. "May the Lord reward you for your deeds, and may you have a full reward from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you've come for refuge." What can you tell me about Boaz? He is what? He is very protective. He is very acceptance and kindness. Loyalty. Yes. Do you see how the first act of kindness, who started with Naomi and went down in Ruth, now comes out of Boaz? It's this idea that you show loving kindness to someone that you ought not to, right? Not to the people that you love and you already cherish, but you show loving kindness when it's not required from you, and that sets in motion a reaction that keeps multiplying. Verse 13. Then she said, "May I continue to find favor in your sight, my lord, for you have comforted me, and I spoken kindly to your servant, even though I am not one of your servants." Ruth knows she's an outsider. By now, probably she's heard how they feel about Moabites in Bethlehem, and she appreciates what Boaz told her. At mealtime, verse 14, Boaz said to her, "Come here and eat some of this bread and dip your morsel in the sour wine." So she sat beside the reapers and heaped up for some parts grain. She ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left over. When she got up to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, Let her glean even among the standing sheaves, and do not reproach her. You must also pull out some handfuls for her from the bundles, and leave them for her to glean, and do not rebuke her. So she gleaned in the field at the evening, and she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. She picked it up and came into the town, and her mother-in-law saw how much she had gleaned. Then she took out and gave her what's left over, and after she, her slave, had been satisfied. An ephah of barley, the quantity they give you here, is as much as a regular worker would reap. She returns home with wages of a full day of work, not the leftovers, a full wage. And Naomi is eating, and then she gives the rest to Ruth. So she gleaned, I return to verse 17, in the field at the evening she beat out what she had gleaned. It was about an ephah barley, and I'm in verse 19. Sorry about that. Her mother-in-law said to her, "Where did you glean today, and where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked, and said, "The name of the man with whom I work today is Boaz." Then Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "Blessed be he by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." Naomi also said to her, "The man is a relative of ours, one of our nearest kin." Then Ruth the Moabite said, "He even said to me, 'Stay close by my servants until they have finished all my harvest.'" Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is better, my daughter, that you go out with his young men, otherwise you might be bothered in another field. It's not safe for you to glean anywhere else." So she stayed close to the young men of Boaz, gleaning until the end of barley and the wheat harvests, and she lived with her mother-in-law. Look how divine providence works. Just as the barley harvest finishes, what's the next harvest? Wheat. So even though God does not appear in the story, God's actions seem to be going along with the loving kindness that's been cascading down. However, we need to make sure that we have a long-term plan for these two women. I mean, harvest at some point is going to end, and we need to see how we're going to make them be permanent members of the society. The thing that I want you to pay attention to up until the chapter of the end of chapter 2 is that they both remain alone. They have not been incorporated to the society yet. Yes, they offer for them, but at the same time they keep them at arm's length. Yes? We see that? Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, I need to seek some security for you so that it may be well with you." Like, what is the long-term plan? Fine, so far we make do, but we need something stable here. Now, here is our kinsman Boaz, with whose young men you have been working. See, he's winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Now wash and anoint yourself and put on your best clothes and go down to the threshing floor, but do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, observe the place where he lies, then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and then, please pay attention to this, he will tell you what to do. She said to her, pay attention to this also, "All that you tell me, I will do." Nowhere in the story is it said that Ruth is beautiful. Why is he then using cosmetics? I will tell you right now, it's not a beautification regime. Ruth is communicating one of two things. Either her period of mourning is over, or she is available for marriage. Naomi asks Ruth to prepare as if for a wedding. Does she ask Ruth to go to Boaz and propose marriage? What does he tell her? Go there, uncover his feet, and then he will tell you what to do. Many things. Let's take it literally for the time being, and I will tell you more later. Yes? Think of a man sleeping in the threshing floor. I will tell you this, just to get an idea. In this culture, only prostitutes would go to the threshing floor at night. The threshing floor has a reputation of a place of sexual orgies. Think of it as a double entendre, the place where the threshing of the seed is taking place literally and metaphorically. Yes? Okay. Naomi's plan presumes that Boaz will prove trustworthy, first assumption, and the second assumption, that Ruth will do exactly what Naomi told her. And by the way, Ruth said to her, all that you tell me, I will do. Now see what happens. When she went down to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had instructed her, when Boaz had eaten and drank and he was in a contented mood, he went to lay down at the end of the heap of grain. Then she came stealthily and uncovered his feet and lay down. At midnight the man was startled and turned over, and there, lying at his feet, was that woman. He said, "Who are you?" And she answered, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your cloak over your servant, for you are next of kin." What did Naomi tell her? Go there, uncover his feet, and he will tell you what to do. Who tells him what to do? Ruth does. What did Ruth say to Naomi? All that you tell me, I will do. Does she? No, she doesn't. She is going to the threshing floor and says to Boaz, you are marrying me. That's what spreading of the cloak means, right? You are marrying me because, what was the reason? You are next of kin. Remember the Levirate law? That if you have someone who dies and he's married and wife remains childless, Ruth goes to him and says, it is your legal duty to give me a son. You are the next of kin. My period of mourning is over. You have to do what you're legally obliged to do to me. Verse 10, he said, may you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. This last instance of your loyalty is better than the first. You have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich. Your period of mourning is over. You could have gone after anybody. However, you decide to play this by the book and follow our custom. And now, my daughter, do not be afraid. I will do for you all that you ask, for all the assembly of my people know that you are a worthy woman. Do you know that term in the Hebrew Bible? She is calling her an Esed Ha'il. This is what they call the armed forces in Israel nowadays. Here they translate as worthy, but I could say a woman of might, a woman of integrity, a woman of power, a woman of respect, all these things. At the end of the book of Proverbs, they have a description of the worthy woman, and I will tell you it's an impossible ideal to attain. But here, Boaz tells her, you came in as an outsider, and you proved to be better than the lot of us. But now, though it is true that I am a near kinsman, there is another kinsman more closely related than I. Remain this night, and in the morning, if he will not act as next of kin for you, good. Let him do it. If he is not willing to act as next of kin for you, then as the Lord lives, I will act as next of kin for you. Lie down until the morning. We have a complication. What is the complication? There is someone else, and that someone else needs to take priority. So she lay at the feet until the morning, but caught up before one person could recognize another, for he said, it must not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. Then he said, bring the cloak you are wearing and hold it out. So she held it and measured out 6 measures of barley and put it on her back. Then she went into the city. She came to her mother-in-law, who said, how did things go with you, my daughter? This Hebrew phrase can also be translated in English, who are you, my daughter? What is Naomi asking? Are you married? Did the plan work? Do you have a husband? Do you have a betrothal? Then she told her all that the man had done for her, saying, he gave me the 6 measures of barley, for he said, do not go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. She replied, wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today. So I'm going to skip all the way to the end of the story. I will tell you that Boaz goes to the gate of the city, finds the next of kin, who appears in the story with the epithet the Goel, the Redeemer. Again, God is the Redeemer in the Hebrew Bible, but we've seen here in the story many people assuming the role of God, because God does not appear in the story. He's always behind the scenes. And Boaz tells to him, you can do this for Ruth and Naomi, but also you have to redeem their property. And this guy does not want to have to take the financial burden, and says, they have too much baggage. One Naomi, then the Moabite, then the property I need to redeem. Why don't you do it? And Boaz says, fine, if you're going to pull out, I'm going to be the one. And indeed, he marries Ruth, and they have a son. So I'm going to skip all the way to the end of the story in verse 13, chapter 4. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. When they came together, the Lord made her conceive, and she bore a son. Then the women said to Naomi, blessed be the Lord, for he has not left you this day without next of kin, and may his name be renowned in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life, and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has borne him. this is the first time in the story that the people say that Ruth loves Naomi. Up until this point was loving kindness, now it's love. Then Naomi took the child and laid him in her bosom, and he became his nurse. This is also atypical because that's something that the mother ought to do, not the grandmother or the mother-in-law. The women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, "A son has been born to Naomi." They named him Servant. He became the father of Jesse, the father of David, the most famous king of all the kings for the people of Israel. And then we go on with the entire genealogy of the book. In one birth, Ruth has provided Boaz with a descendant, Elimelech with memory, Naomi with renewal, and Israel with a grandfather of kings who ruled Jerusalem until his destruction. The bonds between Naomi and Ruth are deeper than those of ethnicity and religion. And together, they manipulate the system to their benefit. The name of God appears in the book only when people speak, when they invoke blessings to one another. What's the theological point of the book? Divine providence and human agency go hand in hand. Ruth offers an alternative vision of a caring community, particularly when it is contrasted with the book of Judges that it follows, where the Israelite community completely disintegrates. The acts of humans in this story are transgressive. The Moabite within Israel represents a destabilizing force that subverts rigid constructions of identity and necessitates an ongoing opening to the other, the outsider, the outcast. Ruth's kindness was a political force, changing the way people considered border crossers. Intercultural marriages and provision. Ruth and Boaz remind us that even in the middle of hostile environments, we're able to create communities that affirm relationships, provide protection, and sustain us. The community in Bethlehem faced a choice. They could have decided to hold tight to the tradition of Moses and refuse Ruth and Naomi to the community. The law was clear and unequivocal in the matter. But at this time, in these circumstances, and for this woman, the application of the law would have resulted in unkindness and ungrace. Knowing her character, Ruth's character, and her kindness, the people agreed that this particular law was not relevant anymore. And so, they took upon themselves the right, even the obligation, to change the law and the tradition so that kindness and grace are extended. Thank you. I kind of raced towards the end, but I will entertain questions if you have them. Yes.
First of all, what's your favorite book? Yeah.
No, the book of Judges. because it's the most difficult book to read. That's why. That's why I'm drawn to the book of Judges. It's very difficult, very challenging, but I'm always learning from it. How many years now? I've been reading the book of Judges, and there are new things I learn every time I read it. That too.
The real question I had, because it's so easy for us to look at those tribal people and think of them as uncivilized, almost barbaric, and yet Ruth shows that they are far ahead of our individualistic society today and the heart that we're showing.
I agree with you. That's why I pressed famine at the beginning of my presentation, and I told you that famine pushes people to cross borders, even enemy borders. Try to identify with people who leave their country behind. Why would anybody in their right mind leave their home, their people, their family? What must they be going through to leave all that behind, cross borders to countries they do not know, do not speak the language, do not know the customs, not know the people, and where everybody is going to see them as border crossers? Like, why did they come here? Didn't we have enough problem? Why do they add to our problem? Why do they put excessive burdens? And this story is not just border crossing people. It's border crossing people who no one wants. They don't want Moabites. They have the worst reputation ever, right? And this story tells you loving kindness to these people can change the world. I tried to be subtle, but you said it. That's why I told you the law is very specific. What the law requires of us to do, right, when ICE agents appear, is very clear. What is our duty to the law? What we do, what is the act of love and kindness, and how that might cascade to change our community is a different thing. I will close with one thing that I want to say at the beginning. Someone asked me, and I don't remember who last time, and that's a question I get 90% of the time. Do you say that capitalism is wrong? Capitalism is wrong. And this is the answer that I've been saying to everybody. Capitalism is a human invention, right? Money is not necessarily wrong. How you use it is all that matters. Like same way with a car. You can use a car to drive someone to the hospital and save their life. You can take a car and run someone down and take away their life. How you use what you have makes all the difference, and this is the prime example from the book of Ruth. How you use what you have, what is the criterion, is going to make all the difference. Love and kindness, that's the criterion. Thank you. Thank you.